Derek, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. We're going to go ahead and get started with Derek Cope. And our first question for Derek is going to come from Mike DePasquale. Go ahead with your question, Mike.
Hey, Derek, it's Mike DePasquale with Fox Miami. I wanted to ask you, you have been quoted as saying you're not the average 62-year-old. You think you're pretty young at heart and in pretty good shape. What went into this thinking process that you wanted to go back to Daytona, race there, a race you won in 1990? And the follow-up, you said you would need to be patient for 200 laps and that you could be battling at the end.
Well, certainly I've been driving, late in my career, maybe more so than a lot of the other guys have or have elected to leave the sport early. Certainly I ran, Darlington a couple of years ago, really always wanted to run some more races, but, with, my role here at Starcom, for the organization, I thought it was best financially just for us to try to put some things to get the race team kind of, under things under its belt and get it some races, and that was just kind of like took me out of the seat, which was really the original plan in the first of my program with it. So I think all in all, this is more something that kind of happened with the owners and my wife. I really was not really privy to what transpired. It was something that Mike Kohler and Matt Kohler and Bill Wolleman had always wanted. It was me to go to Daytona and run Daytona, and I think that this opportunity arose, and they put something together collectively, and then let me know about it, and after it was already done. So it was a gift, really, I think, and I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, I love Daytona. I've always, felt like that if I was going to end things, and I'd like to be doing it there. And certainly I have a lot of passion for the place, and I feel like that I understand the air, and I feel like that can be a factor.
Are you offended by some who are questioning why you're doing this at your age?
I really don't pay attention to social media. I never have. I made it a point a long time ago to never read Speedway Scene or anything that was written, good, bad, or ugly. I really don't care what other people think. If I did, I probably wouldn't even be in this position. So honestly, it really is about what I want. And this is something for my wife and I to absorb together and enjoy, and, have good equipment to go down there and have some fun. And, really, I really don't care what other people think, to be honest with you. So we just go do the best we can, have fun, and let the chips fall where they may. And when it's all said and done, then as long as I'm at peace with myself, I think that's all you can ask for.
Thank you, Derek.
Our next question is going to come from Dan Gelston. Go ahead with the question, Dan.
Thanks, Derek. Obviously, you feel like you still can go, or else you wouldn't be trying, or you wouldn't be in the race. But do you feel like at some point there should be some sort of age requirement to compete in NASCAR? I know Morgan Shepherd got criticized a few years ago for going at it in the 70s. Or do you feel as long as you pass their basic requirements and start up and
yeah, you're breaking up a little bit. I think to kind of maybe tell me if I'm wrong, but I think people obviously have a lot of opinions, and they're going to, and obviously at this day and age they have a platform to voice those, right? Again, we've had guys that came in the sport. I came in the sport, relatively early, and then ended up staying, for a while. But guys like Harry came in, and he was relatively old, and were very successful. So, I do a lot. You're as long as you're in shape, and I think that you're mentally strong and physically in shape to go do the job. Going to a place like Daytona, certainly I think is really more, a lot more mental, and understanding the air and what types of runs, what types of surges the car get, assessing your car, making good conscious decisions, driving within yourself. That's the biggest thing. And I think that a lot of guys don't do that. And, I don't have to prove anything. I don't have to go down there and worry about anything. I really just go down there and have fun and race the car, and hopefully get to 180 laps before I have to go do battle. That is really, the racing has changed, and the way that you physically approach things. I've never been one to go down there with preconceived ideas or notions, and that's the way I'll approach this as well. Go down there, see what I have, work with it, get to 180 laps, and at that point, if I'm still there on the lead lap on 180 laps, they will have to deal with it.
Our next question will come from Mark Garrow. Go ahead with the question, Mark.
Thanks. First two things, Derrike, to thank you for. Number one, for 62-year-olds all around the world who still feel pretty young. Appreciate that. Number two, I don't think I've ever told you, I got a free dinner in Darlington after you won the 500. Had a mustache back then, and they thought I was Derrike Cope, and they bought me a free meal. So I didn't tell them any different. I just took the meal and ran with it. So thank you for that. What do you remember about that day in the 500? What I remember clearly for me and for a lot of us in the media center, we'd already written our story. You know, Dale Earnhardt leads blah, 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 number of laps, and finally the monkey's off his back after XYZ amount of tries. We basically had written all our stories, and we're just, again, just going to fill in some of the basic facts when it was all over, you know, laps led, so on and so forth. And then all of a sudden, you know, in a heartbeat, you know, things change. What do you remember about that race and the last lap and all that went on right there?
Well, I certainly have a pretty vivid memory of really all the things leading up to it, because, you know, Buddy Parrott, you know, was drumming a lot of things in my head. You know, I mean, he was adamant about, you know, a structure and how we're going to get to the end of this thing. And, you know, he'd obviously been there before and had a lot of success. And he felt, and we all knew we had a really good race car. I think that was the biggest thing that we knew in practice, we knew in happy hour. The car was exceptional. And the car was, you know, I mean, very aerodynamic, is very free. And that's really the thing I remember the most, was that the race car itself was very free the whole time. You know, it was up on top of the racetrack for the most part, but it was fast, and you really just had to take care of it. And I think Buddy was adamant about that. You know, racing was different, you know, then in the infancy of restrictor plate racing. Certainly, you know, you could, if you had a fast car, you could run out front, and you kind of were able to separate yourselves from some large packs, unlike today. So a little bit different in contrast there. But I remember, you know, just having to pedal the car all day long. And, you know, we had the lead number of times, we ran up front, really, you know, and I pedaled the thing all day. And I really took care of it, because Buddy just said, look, just get us to the end of this thing. We'll have a shot, and then you can go racing. And, you know, the thing that I guess I wish would have been different was that if we would have had new tires along with the rest of those guys having new tires. You know, I mean, I was on used tires, and we had made our last stop. Buddy had knocked the spoiler down instead of putting it up when I said we were loose. And you know, you basically had what you had. And I drove flat the last whatever 13 laps it was, and the car was loose. And I had to just give a car its head, and I lost ground, and, you know, I just would lose my big run. And I just knew that he kept following me to the top, so I knew that he'd go in there and protect it, you know, for the run. And I was going to the bottom. I was pinching the thing down the last lap. I was ready for it, and I got a pretty good run going down the back straightaway. And you know, lo and behold, you know, his car just started, you know, backing up to me, and then obviously just slipped and moved up, and I drove by him. But yeah, it was, you know, it was really, I would like to have had new tires, because I could have ran the bottom, and I could have been on him, and I would never had to go on the high side, and then I could have manipulated him a bit, I think. So unfortunately, that wasn't the way it was. Not a lot of people know those aspects, but you know, we were fast. We had a shot to win the race, and I think we deserved to win the race.
And my follow-up question to that is, you would later win another race, and then it just all came apart. You ever wonder what if that program had been able to stay together with Parrott, and how different your career might have been because of that? I don't think people understand just how competitive you and that team were back then, and what a force you might have been able to be if you guys were able to hang together.
You know, there's always, you know, it always comes down to choices. I mean, conscious decisions you make, you know, and people make for you. So lots of times it's not always what you do, it's what transpires, you know, within the organizations, right? So, I mean, there's so many variables, and you only can control so many of them. If you're bringing funding and you brought sponsorship, then you have some say. And I think, you know, the way things transpired, the way that, you know, Pure Later was going through, you know, being bought out by Pennzoil, and then, you know, I went through 4 presidents there, and you know, there was a lot of things happening. And then there was, you know, Bob Whitcomb and his relationship with Pure Later, and how they ended things. And I think, you know, it come down to money like it always does. And, you know, they made some decisions and, you know, I ended up losing out in the end because the bulk of my money and personal services and everything were in the latter stages of the deal that I put together. So, you know, then you make, you know, then you kind of have to find another way and you have to reinvent yourself, find something else. And then, you know, I had a really good year with Bobby Allison. And then, you know, from that point there, if I, you know, maybe would have been able to stay there with the funding, you know, my career would have gone in a different route maybe. And then from that point on, you're in, you know, more of a mediocre type of scenario from there. And it's difficult. It started becoming, you know, the funds changed. They escalated from 2 million, you know, to 6-8 million. And then obviously from there it's escalated again. So it just, yeah, I mean, you always reflect. I mean, if people say, well, if you could go back and change things, would you do it? I said, certainly, I'd make a lot of changes. I would certainly, I mean, I've made a lot of choices on cars, people, you know, decisions. So yeah, but you know what, in the grand scheme of things, to have won the way that I won at Dover, I mean, Dover was an animal, it still is. And to win there the way in the fashion we did, almost going a lap down, running out of gas, driving by people and just, you know, basically annihilating them at that point showed that, you know, hey, look, I'm not a one-hit wonder. I can win a speedway. I have the capabilities there. I understand the air. I've always ran out front of those places, always made it through the 125s. And then you go and win Dover. So and then you win a pole at Charlotte. You know, almost won Phoenix. So, you know, hey, I mean, all in all, I got to drive for Bobby Allison and Cale Yarborough. I got to race against, you know, the King and Cale and, you know, Buddy Baker and Neil Bonnet and Tim Richmond. And I don't think you can look back at a career and say that you feel bad about anything if you've done that. That is a well, I think, lived career in my opinion. And you know what? I'm at peace with it.
Thanks. On behalf of all 62-year-olds, good luck. Good luck on
Thank you.
the
I
Daytona.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Our next question is going to come from Jake Nickel. Go ahead with the question, Jake.
Thank you. Derek, just turning back to, I think, the first or second question about how this all came together. Was it something that you've talked about before and that's sort of got things going? And what are the biggest challenges that you think are going to come up and what's realistic?
First of all, I think I had started out to be the driver of the car. And, you know, then, you know, we was taking a lot of money to get the thing up and going. And, you know, obviously we had some opportunities to try to lease a charter and purchase a charter. We were going to run a limited schedule in the beginning, in the infancy of this program. So I was going to drive. And that's really where my mindset was at. But when we were able to procure a lease of a charter and we're going to run a full season, you know, we didn't have a Bolt 1 when I started. And my wife and I started with nothing. And, you know, we were able to get things going. And then, you know, opportunities with like, you know, Jeffrey Earnhardt and you know, some funding to try to help the team. And so you step away and you step back what's best for the organization. And, you know, Mike and Matt Kohler and Bill Wilburn have become like personal friends. I mean, we're family and that's the way we feel about it. So I was going to do whatever I felt like I needed to do for the organization. And then when I had the opportunity to drive a second car and then, you know, guys like Kyle Weatherman and come to work for us and the kid's got a lot of passion and heart and desire and wants to drive. I know where he's at. And so I took myself out of a car again to give him an opportunity to showcase his potential. And, you know, it's just one thing leads to another. And all of a sudden you just don't have the opportunities. And then, you know, you're in the throes of needing funding and keep racing and getting better as a race team. So we'd always talk about me driving races, which I did. But I always wanted to run Daytona. I wanted to be on the speedways because that's really, I think is my forte. And I really believe that I could truly, you know, win there again. And just never really transpired. So this was put together by the owners and my wife. And we were able to procure a charter and with Rick Ware Racing and Jacobs Companies came on board to help us sponsor the thing. So, you know, great opportunity. And I mean, I don't care how old you are. I mean, there's about everybody and their brother want to have this opportunity and would probably seize it. As far as, I'm sorry.
Go on, carry on.
Yeah, I mean, as far as expectations, I guess, I think that was the second part of your question there. You know, I always go to Daytona. I've learned lessons. You know, you go there with preconceived notions or ideas or plans, and it just never ever really works out that way, right? And this race is elusive. It is difficult to win. And, you know, after you win it, you feel like you can go back and win it again. And every time you go there, you feel that way. And I still feel that way. It's just there are a lot of the way the races run now, the level of competition, the way that the aerodynamics and the packages are. It's a whole different, animal. And so you have to really approach it, I think, a number of ways. And then, the key is you got to just kind of lay in the weeds and be smart and miss the wrecks and get to the 180 lap mark. And at that point, then you start to assess what you can do. And, you kind of like make your plan at that point. But really, as far as an expectation, my thing is to go down there and just absorb. My wife and I absorb the atmosphere, what we get out of it, what we can enjoy out of it. But when the thing 500 starts, I want to be in the best piece I have. I don't want to have a problem in practice or the 150. I want to get to the 500, and then I want to try to get myself in a position late in the race to be a factor. So staying on the lead lap is my key. Assessing what I have as a race car, finding about who I feel like that I could align myself with, how they're utilizing me, who's trying to manipulate me, if I can manipulate other people. And at that point, with 20 to go, then I'll make my bed and I'll lay in it.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Our next question will come from Lee Spencer. Go ahead with the question, Lee.
Thank you, Matt, and thanks for joining us, Derrike. I have a couple of questions. And one, first of all, you talked about the economics of the sport, and certainly it changed dramatically from the time when you were running full time to the time where you kind of backed down a little bit. Will the next gen car help you from an owner standpoint, and do you expect it to even the playing field to some degree?
Well, certainly, I think initially it will. It's such a departure. I mean, a complete departure from what we're accustomed to. Basically, a spec car, and I think initially, yes, I think it will probably level things out to some degree. I think the driver and the engine becomes really important at that point initially. But like everything, when you have an organization that has 500 employees and we have 20, cream does rise to the top. You can throw more things at it. You can throw more ideas, more engineering, more simulation, more CFD modeling, wind tunnel time. So those are the things as a small organization that you typically start to fade because you don't have the resources to do that. Alliances, I think, will be important initially. We're looking at those things and if we could create one. As far as the financial side, I think that I don't think the actual car itself and the outlay on the the initial whatever amount of cars you can afford to get started with is the major hurdle. I think it's all the ancillary things that you have to put together to encompass that, because everything we have is, and we're talking about total obsolescence. Everything will be, every nut, bolt, shim, wedge, slug will go next door in a holding tank. And you'll be purchasing everything new. So, and we don't know about crashes. I mean, the uprights, all those things, the shock absorbers, those are all things that we don't really know how the car will, absorb a crash, how much, collateral damage will become out of those things, the transaxle itself, impact on that, the wear and tear, the servicing of them. So those are variables that yet I can't really put a number to yet. And I think that's where the numbers will probably escalate. But I mean, all in all, I think everybody's excited about a new opportunity, a new car. But it is a big undertaking for 20 people of an organization like ours, in contrast to a team that has 100, 200, 300, 500.
And secondly, going into next Sunday's race, the one word we hear time and again is how aggressive the racing has become at at super speedways. Yeah, I'm showing my age too. But at super speedways, and in the past where the strategy might have been to hang at the back and then, make a run for it at the end, that just doesn't seem to be working. You'll get left behind, what have you. Have you studied game tape to try to get an idea as to what your best strategy will be? Do you feel you need to be up in those packs or you're going to lose the draft and go laps down?
Yeah, I have, I've been looking at a lot of the past races. I've looked at a lot of the 150s. I looked at, how people have approached the races, the OEM involvements, how the strategies, have been implemented, the pit strategy, pitting sequences. I've been looking at pretty much all those aspects to try to really get a feel for, what guys think, how they assess, what's been the most beneficial and what's probably been the most detrimental. And, looking at the situation I'm in, we've even been having a collective talk amongst, the teams that, I'm driving for with Rick Ware Racing. They have 4 teams, and we have Quinn, and then we have, BJ out there who we all have relationships with. And I think the biggest thing is just, you have to be able to assess what you have as, as the hardware, as the fixture that you're going to be driving. And I think you have to assess really how good it is, how it really compares and contrasts to the other guys, and trying to assess that leading up to the 500. Running at the back, you get wrecked too. Middle, you get wrecked. Trying to stay at the tail end of the fast pack and not get lapped, position yourself. You put yourself in harm's way there as well. I don't think there's any real safe place. I think it comes down to a lot of good fortune, being in the right place, right time, missing the wreck, being cognizant of what cars look unstable, who's doing stupid things. A lot of assessing. You're gonna have to do a lot of that and have some good fortune along with it. But the sport is very aggressive right now. You have a lot of young kids that really have no regard for pretty much anything except getting to the finish line and winning. So what? The way I felt like is I'm not going to really worry about pretty much anything. I feel like that I understand the air as good as anyone. I will go to Daytona, and if I do make it, to the end and I'm 20 to go, and I can get myself in a position to to have some air and be in a position to race hard, they'll know I'm there. The one thing I have always done is I'm not afraid of anything. I'm not afraid of mixing it up. I'm not afraid of pushing and shoving, and I'm not afraid of wrecking. So bottom line is, if they want to play, we'll play. That's just the way I look at it. I got one shot at this thing, and when it's all said and done, you know what? I can walk away, get to the airplane, and say, you know what? I had a lot of fun today. And sorry you guys got wrecked.
Appreciate your time. Good luck.
Our next question will come from Wolfgang Munzer. Go ahead with the question, Wolfgang.
Hi, Derek. Can you hear me? Greetings from Germany.
Excuse me?
Greetings from Germany.
I said
Hey, how are
greetings
you?
from
Yeah, I know
Germany.
who
Can
you
you hear
are.
me?
Yeah, I know who
Okay.
you are. How are you?
Good, thank you. Only one question. From the time you were winning the Daytona 500 until the present day, until today, what's for yourself the most significant innovation or evolution technical-wise in NASCAR racing?
Well, I think that's difficult to give you like one pinpoint, one thing that has changed. Obviously, from a driver's perspective in the car, I mean, you're in a cocoon, you're cramped, you don't really have a lot of mobility. In the old days, you could turn your head around, you could look around and see cars, and you had a lot more visual capabilities yourself to make decisions. Less so now. You're really much looking straight ahead and out the rearview mirror and your side mirror, and relying on the spotters and things. As far as the cars and the hardware goes, I mean, I think the biggest thing is that now the cars are, there's no ride height rule. The cars are down on the ground. You got a radial tire. The car is, basically it's all about pitch attitude and being on the deck. And just really about, I think, your threshold as a race car driver of how free you can run the car without having to make a wheel input. So really, those are the things. And then, you have to understand the air and have good fortune. So, I mean, it's a race car is a race car. And, it's kind of the same geometry and the same thing. We're just on the deck and hanging on.
Thanks very much. Good luck.
Our next question is going to come from Dustin Long. Go ahead with the question, Dustin.
Thank you. Derrike, certainly you're tied in history with Dale Earnhardt with the Daytona 500. And a couple things in regards to Dale, I'm curious, did you ever talk, did that finish ever come up in any conversation, or is that just something that you don't talk with somebody who's been vanquished about that moment, or just what that moment was like if you ever talked to him? And secondly, just, any type of, when you think back to Dale, what are the special stories that experiences you had, whether it's on the track with something you saw that he did, or how he raced you, or what, or just even a special moment behind the scenes that people just, don't get to be privy to? Sure.
Well, certainly, Dale and I did have a conversation. And, I think you have to, you sympathize. I mean, I've been in the sport a long time. you know, I mean, my first cup race was 1982. So I've been doing it a long time. I mean, I went to Rare Ontario and Dale won Rookie of the Year. So, you know, you spend a lot of time with people, and, you know, after it was all said and done, I knew how, you know, how many times he's tried and how many times things just didn't go his way, right? And you know, here I am, you know, sitting in, you know, champagne, you know, I get up in Unical Suite, you know, toasting champagne and, you know, and experiencing the whole thing with Letterman, the whole bit. And, you know, afterwards we spoke, and, you know, I said, look, you know, I hope you do win this thing, because it really is, you know, for me, it was life changing. You obviously have done so much in the sport, but I really want you to experience it and hope that you can, you know, I guess, have the final chapter of what, you know, it would be for you, you know. And I said, you know, and he said, you know what, he said, yeah, I hope I do. But he said, you know, it's not the Daytona 499. And he said, you know what, you gotta be there, you gotta finish all the laps, and you gotta make it happen. And so that was the thing, I think, that, you know, when he said it's not the Daytona 499, I mean, I think obviously it was distasteful for him, and he was hurting, and he was mad, and I mean, as Dale can be. But, you know, I mean, when he says something like that, you realize that, you know, he realizes that, you know what, it's not over till it's over, right? And I think that's what I took away from that particular situation, you know. As far as the way that Dale dealt with me, you know, we certainly had our run-ins, you know, at places like Wilkesboro, and, you know, where, you know, he tried to, you know, move me, wreck me, and then I got mad and chase him, wreck him, try to move him and do the same thing. And they're running for a championship, and, you know, Richard's calling Buddy and telling Buddy to, you know, knock it off, and I'm me telling him, you know, you go what yourself, I don't care, right? You know, I mean, at that point I was young, I was brash, like a lot of these kids are now, right? I didn't care about what he wanted, I cared about what I wanted. And I think at that point, when I would retaliate, do those things, even with like Ricky Rudd, some other guys, at that point, I never really had a lot of problems with Dale after that. You know, he raced me hard, he'd rub on me. Then when I had a good enough car and I get back to him, you know, there's times he put his finger out the window and said, go. And I said, no, I'm going to give you exactly what you gave me. And so I think we had a lot of respect from that standpoint. I really not had a lot of trouble with him. And he raced me hard. And when I didn't have a car to race with him, I didn't cause trouble. I tried to race the way I wanted to be raced. And, you know, that's all I can really say about that. I had a lot of respect for him. I certainly, as a guy that can drive a race car, I mean, obviously, very, very talented guy, and, you know, an icon in the sport, and has really done so much for the sport, and really left us, you know, too early. And he had a lot to give, and it's unfortunate.
Thank you.
Our final question is going to come from Dustin Albino. Go ahead with the question, Dustin.
Yeah, Derrike, this is being billed as your final start in the 500. Would you go out to say, though, that it'll be your final start in NASCAR, or can you never say never?
You know, I've just always been a deal where I never say never, right? But, you know, realistically, I believe this will probably be it. I just, in my mind and my heart, I think I'm to the point where I love my role with my wife here at Starcom. I love the boys, you know, Mike, Matt, and Bill, and I think I would kind of resign myself maybe that it's time. I may test the next gen car just so I have a feel for that. I mean, I'm very involved in the shock absorbers and, you know, the cars itself. And so, you know, I probably will drive the car just to have a sense of what I sense and feel, so that I can help, you know, the driver and what we can do from a chassis standpoint. But other than that, you know, if I do any other racing, you know, I run the 24 hours a lot, you know, a GTP car, a Ferrari, an open cockpit Lola. I'd like to do maybe open wheel racing of some sort. I'd like to pedal, but, you know, really where I'm at right now, I'm at peace, and I'm pretty comfortable moving on.
Thank you.
Outstanding. Well, Derrike, thank you so much for taking the time to join us, and that's an inspirational story. Good luck in the 63rd running of the Daytona 500.
Thank you so much.